Can we do the VeggieTale intro?
VeggieTale
Yeah.
intro.
I'm John. And I'm Dan.
If you
No.
must. Hi, I'm Gianna,
And I'm Dan.
and we're the owners of Blue Dog Farms. Dan has always been a farmer, so when we moved to Pennsylvania from Texas in 2010, we started raising animals. Initially, we raised animals just for our family, but we have 4 kids, so the grocery bills can be pretty intense. So after we started sharing our beef with our friends and family, we just started raising more, and it just kind of grew from there. So what we do at Blue Dog Farms is we raise all grass-fed and grass-finished beef, which is unique, especially where we are, because most people are finishing on grain. It's not that one way is better than the other way. It's just what we prefer. We prefer the taste, and we prefer how lean grass-fed and grass-finished beef is. So that's what we do. But because not many people in the area are truly all grass finishing, we're a little bit different. And it takes us a lot longer to finish a cow on only grass. We're looking at 24 to 26 months cycle. So because it's hard for you to ramp up when you have a 2-year lead time, and because we love it so much, we added chicken in 2018. It's all natural, it's pasture raised. We feed a non-GMO feed. We can usually go from about mid-March to November, depending on the weather. Obviously, when the weather gets too cold and the pasture disappears a bit, we can't raise chicken anymore. And then we do turkey as well for Thanksgiving. In 2020, with all of the concerns about the food supply chain and just concerns about grocery stores being empty and whatnot from our customers, we decided to add pasture pork.
Hey! Stop that!
So we did 20 hogs in 2020, and it was a lot of fun. We learned a lot. So our farm in general, we're truly guided by Christian principles, specifically service to others, holding our animals in high regard, and just being good stewards of the land and everything that God has given to us. So as we were looking at our farm plans in the winter of 2019, we realized we really wanted to invest in being more responsible, very responsible, and using more sustainable agricultural practices whenever we could.
And less chemicals. We wanted to completely get away from chemicals wherever possible. Any grazing operation has a couple of issues. One is pests and one is weeds. And we were looking for a way to deal with these two issues that we deal with without using chemicals. The first is pests. And one of the pests that you have to deal with in a cattle operation, really any animal operation, are worms. And we already mitigate our worm issue by rotational grazing.
So let's get them moved. Cows. Come on, 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 cows. Highlight of their day. Come on, cows. These are the newest ones. They don't quite have it figured out yet. Come on. Come on, cows. Get over there. There you are. So I wanted to take a minute to talk about the minerals. Now, back when cattle, or more accurately in North America, buffalo ran wild in this area, bison, they had long, wide range that they would travel. And today we can't do that because nobody wants cows running through their yard and eating their azaleas. So, or, you know, getting out on the road. That's also bad. But in their travels, what they would do is they would could smell around and identify different minerals that they require to be healthy. And they'll actually paw the ground and dig that up. You know, any kind of mineral that they are requiring, like salt. They'll find something that's a little bit salty, little dirt that's got a little bit of salt in it. Hard to find in this part of the country, but in the West it's a little more common, especially around Utah and stuff. And they would travel to those areas where the minerals were on occasion and lick the ground and get the minerals they needed to stay healthy. Well, we can't do that today, and so what we do instead is we provide them minerals, and they have free choice of these minerals. They don't need a lot of them, but they just they know what their body needs. They crave what they want, and then they come eat from it. That's why it's really important to keep good fresh minerals to your livestock so they get what they need to stay healthy. And that's what we do here at Blue Dog Farms. It's all part of the mob grazing regiment. You keep them pinned up so they compete for food, and they're more willing to eat plants that they wouldn't normally eat. And this is how it was when they roamed wild, because they had to stay in groups or they would get picked off by predators. Well, again, that's not the case today, so we keep them grouped up, and they do a better job of eating more of the feed that's available, which is actually more healthy for the animal. It's kind of like eating your vegetables and not just cake. If you just ate cake, it wouldn't be healthy for you either. And when you turn them out in a big area like this one and don't keep them confined to small spaces, you'll find they'll go around and eat whatever tastes good and leave the rest until it's old and tough, and they're not able to eat it anyway. And a lot of that grass goes to waste, and they're not as healthy, in my opinion, because some of the stuff that they leave behind is actually rich in vitamins that they need. So we keep them pinned up in just a day's whatever they're going to eat in a day, and simulate when they were out in the wild and being hunted by wolves and bear. They would stay in a group and compete for food in that group, and then they would move. And we try and simulate that as close as possible. That is one of the major points of mob grazing that we do here at Blue Dog Farms.
And we already mitigate our worm issue by rotational grazing. When the eggs of the worm come out of the back of a cow, it's a 3-day gestation before they hatch, crawl up to the top of a piece of grass, and are ready to be eaten again. And by that time, the cattle are 3 days away from where those eggs are. So we already mitigated the worms in that regard. But the flies are a different story. They have the same 3-day cycle. They lay their eggs in the cow patties and hatch 3 days later, and spend a couple of days as larvae, and then become flies. Well, they just fly over to the herd that are only 3 or 4 days away. So we did some research, and one of the things we found that was good for flies were chickens. And so the chickens are to follow the cows around about 3 days behind the cows, and they get in and scratch with their feet and eat the larvae out of the cow patty. Now, you may have seen YouTube videos or heard people talk about harrowing their pasture behind their cattle. And this is to spread out the cow patties and make them too thin for the flies to effectively raise their young in the cow patties. Well, the chickens do that for us. And they also give us eggs, which is another income stream to the farm. The other one is weeds. And one thing we do in all of our electric fences, the main outside and any permanent cross fencing, the bottom wire is cold. In other words, it doesn't have any electricity in it. There's always at least one in every herd that has the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence syndrome, and they will immediately head to whatever fence there is and try and eat underneath of it. So with having that bottom wire cold, it allows the cow or whatever animal it is to be able to eat underneath the fence. So I don't have as much weed eating to do to keep the weeds from interfering with the electric fence.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing we did was we introduced goats into our herd of cattle. Goats' first choice of feed are usually weeds. So they will eat weeds that cows won't even think about eating, like poison ivy, multifloral rose. Although I've seen cows pick the leaves off of that in the spring, the goats, that's one of their favorite things is the multifloral rose. Those are those thorny things that grow up in the fence line if you don't know what they are. And so we run goats with our cattle as a form of weed control. Now, they don't do it all. We have to do intensive grazing, and if I can't graze it off, I mow it off. But we have effectively done away with all herbicides that are required to have healthy pastures.
So one of the benefits from the goats as well is they actually provided additional value stream to the farm and served as a first business, if you will, for our 13-year-old daughter, Jalen. Jalen adores goats. She always wanted a goat breeding business. So we were able to help her get started with her tribe as her very first business. And those are the goats that are with the cattle. So they stay with the cattle until just before they give birth, and then we bring them back to the barn where they stay until they're weaned, and then they go back out. So once we had this plan together for running the hens about 3 days behind and running the goats along with the cattle, we actually put in a grant from the Skirted Soldier. If you don't know who she is, wonderful lady, Miss Rhonda Smith, is a Skirted Soldier. She's a veteran of the United States Air Force, and she's a farmer who makes artisan loose leaf tea. And part of her mission is to support other female veterans in farming endeavors. So our grant proposal asked for money to pay for additional fencing materials so that we could add in hens and goats. So we were just so humbled and blessed to be chosen by the PA Veteran Farming Project and the Skirted Soldier to receive that grant that allowed us to really make this vision a reality. In the spring or summertime, we worked through it of 2020. So we ended up being able to purchase additional reels and polywire for rotationally grazing the goats with the cows. And we were also able to get poultry netting. Big shout out to Kenco Farm Fencing Supplies. They've been just a terrific partner for our farm. We should just put them on direct deposit and send them money every month because we use them for all kinds of things. Rather than build a chicken coop on a trailer, we actually purchased an old horse trailer with no title and very, very little flooring left. And this gets moved around the pasture and serves as shelter and a place for the chicken feed for the laying hens. As many of you know, if you've been following us on Facebook or YouTube, we recently were awarded a grant from the Skirted Soldier. Maybe she's not destined to be a YouTube star. Here you go, Dan.
Say bye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube. The setup was rather easy because we were already doing rotational grazing. We already do intensive pasture management practices, so it was fairly simple. We just added a third wire to keep the goats in, and we were in business. The plan was the goats would be in with the cows, and the hens would be approximately 3 days behind the herd, and we would move daily. Of course, anytime you add new animals or processes to your farm, you always have the best laid plans, but there are always things that you didn't anticipate and things that just don't work the way that you expected them to work. So this is a great learning opportunity. We always take it as that. And part of the reason why we wanted to be with you today was to share what we learned. So hopefully you don't make similar mistakes to what we did.
So keeping goats in. John had mentioned that we added a third wire to our temporary fencing. Well, a lot of people use only one wire for cattle. Our situation is a little different since we butcher every month. We have cattle of all different sizes. And if you've got a wire that's up high enough to be of concern to the large cows, the small cows grazing don't see it with their head down, and by the time it touches them just at the front shoulders, their initial response is to bolt forward because the pain is coming from behind their head, and then they end up out. Since early on, we've used two wires, one lower one for the young cattle and the upper one for the big cattle. Well, goats can crawl underneath a kitchen door. So we added a third wire down lower. Now, especially in the spring and early summer, when the grass is growing like gangbusters, that sometimes brings up a problem of having to mow a strip to put the fence up because that wire is so low, but it does keep the goats in. Goats don't like electricity either. The other thing were the gates. You build all your permanent fence, you hang your gates, and it looks so pretty, and then you add goats, and they just kind of crawl underneath the gates. So we had to move a bunch of gates, and any new gates we put up are down low so that the goats can't crawl through. And most farmers don't like getting shocked. Yeah, so when I put up gates for cattle, when you swing them open against a fence, they don't go against the electric fence. I have boards up that the gates will swing up against so you can mess with the gate and not get shocked. Well, the goats crawl through those too. So one of the things that I found effective is to replace those boards with real small squared woven wire rather than boards. The other thing we had happen was with the chickens. We raised them up until they were old enough to lay eggs, and they're in their new trailer. They have nest boxes and food, and they're happily behind the cows. And I mean, this is chicken paradise. There's no fences. They roam free. They have a guard goose to keep the hawks away from them, which is very effective. And then we moved them out of sight of the house. And in just a few hours' time, the foxes made this super highway between the chicken trailer and the fence line, or the tree line. And they were packing off chickens just as fast as they could. They're just making round trip after round trip, packing off chickens. And we lost half of our flock in the space of about 3 hours.
Terrible.
So they had to go back into the electric netting. Foxes don't like getting shocked either. So we learned that a goose, while being very effective against aerial predators, not so much against foxes. They did leave the goose alone, but they just packed off the chickens they wanted. So we are looking for next year and the following years for adding additional guard animals. We don't have it exactly planned out. We would like to leave the mother goats out in the field after they give birth with their tribe. But again, the foxes and coyotes will pack off baby goats when they're newborns. So we're looking for a guard llama, perhaps, that will adopt the goats. Really, one of the only true guard animals that adopts other animals as their own are llamas. While llamas may make good guard animals for goats, very few people that I've found have been able to successfully get them to adopt chickens. So our plan is to get perhaps some alpacas or a donkey. Now, alpacas will not adopt the chickens either, but if you can keep them in the immediate area of the chickens, they will run off the foxes because they don't like foxes. And for some reason, foxes don't like alpacas. And it's like fox repellent. The other animal, donkeys, you'd only need one. They also do not like any kind of canine. If you get even a dog, unless you have a donkey that's used to dogs, any dog, coyote, or fox that comes into the pasture, whether there's other animals or not, the donkeys will go after. So those are the options we're looking at for additional guard animals to protect both the goats and the laying hens.
You're a good girl, aren't you, Harry? Good girl. Good girl. Hi, Ronald. overall, we consider the addition of goats to be a success in its first year. We've fixed the gates, as Dan said, and replaced the boards with woven wire, so we should be good for the upcoming year. You never know with goats; they're precocious. On the positive side, Jalen did sell her first 2 babies and has been able to acquire more goats. So she has a tribe of 9 currently and 2 pregnant. So that continues to be successful. The chickens, we obviously didn't get the egg feast and harvest that we had hoped for, but hopefully with the addition of guard animals, we will be able to run that more successfully this summer. I'm sure there'll be many changes in the future, and we're happy to share with you what has worked and what hasn't worked here at Blue Dog Farms. You can always follow us on our Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel where we actually post videos of some of this, so you can kind of see all these shenanigans and more. And we welcome you to follow us there. And if you have any questions, we're here and ready to take your questions now.